What if the simplest, kindest thing you do in your whole life is also the one thing that changes everything forever? Hi, everyone, and welcome to Viral Tales. Before we start this amazing story, please take a second to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We love bringing you these true-to-life moments. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We love hearing from you. The quiet that fell over the Golden Fork, one of the fanciest restaurants in all of Manhattan, was so thick and heavy that it felt like someone had turned off all the sound. No one talked. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Dozens of eyes were glued to a small patch of carpet between the tables. 10-year-old Leo Montgomery was shaking. His legs, held tight by shiny, silver metal braces, wiggled as he reached out a small, hopeful hand toward Ms. Ava Johnson, the only black waitress working in the whole huge room. A gentle, soft song had just started playing on the live piano, and Leo's sudden idea to ask someone to dance came out of nowhere, like a surprise jump in a scary movie. "Sir, take control of your son." The loud, sharp voice of Mr. Benson, the manager, sliced through the silence like a sharp knife. "That is not proper. This is not a place for dancing, and our employees are not here to play with children." Mr. Charles Montgomery, the owner of Montgomery Investments and one of the richest men in the entire country, swallowed hard. It was the very first time he'd been brave enough to take Leo out to eat in public since the awful accident 2 years ago that had hurt his son's legs. It was a mistake, he thought, a mistake he would never make again. "Leo, sit down," Mr. Charles ordered. His voice was quiet but very strong. Ms. Ava stood perfectly still. Her eyes moved back and forth between the angry manager, the powerful billionaire father, and the sweet boy whose hand was still hanging in the air waiting. In the 5 years she had worked at the Golden Fork, she had learned the most important trick of all, how to become invisible. This was especially true around very rich, important customers like Mr. Charles Montgomery. "Mr. Benson, I am leaving," Ms. Ava said. Her voice was calm, like a quiet stream. "My shift is over." She untied her long apron and placed it neatly on her serving tray. Then, to the absolute shock of every single person in the restaurant, she gave a gentle, honest smile to Leo and finally took his hand. "I can't dance in an apron," she said simply. Mr. Charles stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly on the floor. "What do you think you are doing?" he demanded. Ms. Ava looked right into his eyes. "I am accepting an invitation, sir." Before anyone, even the angry Mr. Benson, could try to stop her, Leo took a very small, very careful step forward. His foot dragged heavily across the shiny floor, and the metal of his braces made a loud, awful screech. But Ms. Ava did not try to pull him, or help him, or make him hurry up. She simply made her own step slower, matching her pace perfectly to his. "She is going to be fired tomorrow," a woman at the next table whispered, her voice full of nasty excitement. Mr. Charles watched, frozen in place. A sudden memory hit him like a warm wave. Elizabeth, his late wife, dancing with little Leo in their sunny living room. "It's not about doing it perfectly," she had told him. "It's about feeling the connection." As Ms. Ava slowly followed Leo's clumsy, painful steps, something deep inside the boy's eyes changed. His fear began to melt away, replaced by a look of intense, hard concentration. His shame and embarrassment went away, replaced by a shy, proud look. For the first time since the accident, he wasn't being led or helped or told he was doing it wrong. He was leading. "Mr. Montgomery," the manager's voice broke into his thoughts. "I promise you, this will never, ever happen again. She will be properly punished." Mr. Charles did not answer. The whole restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the powerful man's next move. After all, a man with his money and influence could end anyone's job and whole career with just one single, quiet word. Employees stopped pouring water. Other customers stared with a creepy, waiting curiosity. But Leo's smile, big and bright and so genuine, was the only thing Mr. Charles could truly hear in the loud silence. After just 3 slow, careful dance steps, Ms. Ava gently led the boy back to his table. "Thank you for asking me to dance," she said to him, speaking formally, as if he were a grown-up boss. It was a great honor. When she turned to walk away, Mr. Charles finally spoke. "Wait." His voice sounded strange, a little rough, almost like he didn't even recognize it himself. "What is your full name?" "Ava Johnson, sir." Mr. Charles nodded slowly. "Ava Johnson," he repeated, saying the name as if he were writing it down in his mind forever. Then he reached into his expensive suit jacket, took out a business card, and held it out to her. "My office. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. The entire restaurant held its breath again. Ms. Ava took the card without showing any emotion, but Mr. Charles saw her hand tremble just a tiny bit. "Dad," Leo called out sadly as she walked away. "Why did you do that?" The question hung in the air like an accusation, like he had done something wrong. Mr. Charles looked down at his son. For a brief, sharp moment, he saw not just the child Elizabeth had left him, but a whole, complete person whose wants and feelings he had completely ignored for the last 2 years. As the awkward, silent dinner went on, no one noticed the last quick glance Miss Ava gave the room before she left. It was not a look of fear or of giving up. It was a look of calm, quiet determination, a look that fought back against the angry storm that was starting to brew deep in Mr. Charles Montgomery's eyes. The lobby of Montgomery Tower was so shiny with its glass and marble walls that it seemed to reflect the morning sunlight like a giant mirror. Ms. Ava Johnson instantly felt wrong and out of place in her very best clothes, a simple navy blue skirt and a white blouse she had bought on sale a long time ago. The important people rushing past her wore suits and dresses that probably cost more money than her rent for a whole year. "Ava Johnson to see Mr. Montgomery," she told the receptionist. The receptionist looked her up and down with a cold, almost scientific look before making a phone call. "18th floor, Miss Julia will meet you." In the smooth, fast elevator, Miss Ava took a very deep breath. She squeezed her worn, old purse tightly against her chest. It wasn't really fear she felt. It was a quiet, solid strength that came from having faced much, much harder things in her life than a meeting with a rich man. Miss Julia was the assistant, a woman in her 40s with eyes that were sharp and judging, and a posture that was perfect like a wooden doll. "Mr. Montgomery is on a conference call," Miss Julia said, her voice dry and crisp. "Please follow me." As Miss Ava walked to the long hallways, which were covered in mirrors, she could feel the curious stares of the employees. A black woman being led through the private, executive offices was rare enough to make everyone start whispering and wondering. "He had you fired, didn't he?" Miss Julia asked suddenly, her voice low, when they were alone in a silent waiting room. "It happens all the time. Powerful clients complain, and people like you lose their jobs. Simple as that." "People like me?" Ms. Ava asked quietly. "You know what I mean," Miss Julia said, adjusting her glasses. "Employees who don't know their place." Ms. Ava smiled a little, but she wasn't amused. "And where exactly would that be?" Before Miss Julia could answer that rude question, her phone buzzed. "He will see you now." Mr. Charles Montgomery's office was huge. It took up half of the entire floor. Through the giant windows that stretched from the floor all the way up to the ceiling, the city of Manhattan looked like a distant, tiny playground, a place he owned. The man himself was standing, gazing out at the city as if it were truly his private property. "Mr. Montgomery." Ms. Ava greeted him formally, her voice steady. Mr. Charles finally turned. His face was a hard mask of control, showing absolutely no feeling. "Miss Johnson, thank you for coming." He pointed a finger at a big, soft chair. "Please sit." The silence that followed was long and heavy, and Ms. Ava knew why. It was a sneaky trick, the kind of silence designed to make people nervous, so they would talk too much and accidentally tell on themselves. "Do you have a background?" Mr. Charles finally asked. "Excuse me?" "Education." "College." "What did you study?" Ms. Ava kept her eyes locked on his. "A bachelor's degree in child development from NYU. And an incomplete master's degree in special education." Something quick flashed across Mr. Charles's hard face. Surprise, maybe. "And you work as a waitress," he said, sounding like he didn't quite believe it. "I work 3 jobs, actually," Ms. Ava answered simply, proud of her struggle. "The restaurant, a bookstore on the weekends, and I tutor children whenever I can find students." Mr. Charles walked over to her desk, picking up a folder that was thick with papers. "I did some deep research on you, Miss Johnson," he said. His voice was suddenly colder. "I wanted to understand who the person was. Who—" He stopped for a second, then finished the sentence. "Dance with my son." Ms. Ava decided to ask the question herself. "I imagine you want to know how much I want for not telling anyone about what happened. Or maybe you are here to confirm I was fired by Mr. Benson." Mr. Charles finally sat down, his leather chair making a small squeak. He leaned forward. "Let's be very clear. My son, Leo, has been through a terrible thing. He is shy and easily embarrassed, and the last 2 years have been pure hell for him. I pay people thousands of dollars, doctors, physical therapists, private tutors, to help him. Yet a random stranger walks up, makes a public scene, and suddenly he is smiling. I want to know why. And I want to know what you expected to gain." Ms. Ava took another deep breath, letting the anger in his voice wash over her without moving her own calm inside. "I expected to gain absolutely nothing, sir. Your son asked me to dance. He was scared, and he was being embarrassed by your manager. I chose to treat him like a young man asking a lady for a dance, not like a disabled child who needed pity or correction. He was a leader. I just followed his steps." "But you knew the risk," Mr. Charles pressed. "You knew Mr. Benson was standing right there. You knew who I was. You chose a moment of maximum visibility to perform an act of kindness. Why? Was it to attract my attention? To get a better job?" "I chose to show a child respect," Ms. Ava replied, and her own voice now had a quiet strength that was almost as powerful as his money. "I'm a black woman working 3 jobs with 2 degrees. I already know what people think of me and what my place is supposed to be. If I wanted a better job, I would have used my special ed degree, not risked my waitressing job. I just could watch a boy's heart break in front of me." Mr. Charles stared at her, not with anger anymore, but with a deep, studying look. He flipped open a file. "Your master's program stopped because your financial aid was cut. You owe the university almost $30,000, which you can't pay. You live in a tiny one-room apartment in a very unsafe part of the city. You need money desperately. And you have a degree in special education." He paused, his eyes like 2 pieces of ice. "Do you think you can help my son, Leo?" The question hung there, a shocking change in the hostility of the last 10 minutes. It was a moment the whole fight switched from a firing to an opportunity. Ms. Ava knew this was the real hook, the real reason she was here. The air in the expensive, silent office suddenly felt electric and heavy with a massive choice. The silence in the grand office was so complete you could hear the distant, faint hum of the city far below. Ms. Ava Johnson knew this was the most important moment of her life. It wasn't about money. It was about the respect that Mr. Charles Montgomery was finally forced to consider. "Do I think I can help your son, Leo?" Ms. Ava repeated the question slowly. "Sir, I already did help him. I reminded him that he is the leader of his own steps. A therapist teaches him how to walk. I would teach him how to live with pride. But you don't need a special educator for a tutor, Mr. Montgomery. You need someone to fill a giant, empty space in his life that your money cannot reach." Mr. Charles leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her. The mask of cold control on his face finally started to crack, just a little. He looked tired and very, very lonely. "My wife, Elizabeth, used to say that." He whispered, his voice rough. "She said you can't buy connection. She understood Leo better than anyone." Ms. Ava nodded gently. She did, and she taught him a beautiful lesson that he almost forgot. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. When he held out his hand to me, he was connecting. He wasn't asking for pity. Mr. Charles took a deep breath, picking up the thick file that held all of Ms. Ava's life secrets. He didn't open it again. He just held it like it was a heavy weight. "Here is my final offer, Miss Johnson," he said, his voice now strong and serious. "I will not have you tutor Leo. I will not have you work for me. That would be treating you like another employee." Ms. Ava waited, her heart beating a fast, loud rhythm against her ribs. She was ready for anything. A dismissal, a large amount of cash to buy her silence, or even a low-paying job. I will personally write a check to NYU to pay off your entire master's degree debt. $30,000 immediately, Mr. Charles stated, watching her closely for any gasp or sign of excitement. You will be completely free of that burden. In addition, I will give you a full, tax-free donation of $70,000. This money is to pay your rent, buy you a reliable car, and give you enough time, a full year, to finish your degree and start your career as a fully qualified special education professional. This is not payment for silence. This is a scholarship from my family to you. You earned it the moment you took Leo's hand and let him lead. Ms. Ava did not cry. She did not jump up or scream. Instead, a strange, quiet feeling of warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't the feeling of winning a lottery. It was a feeling of being seen, truly seen, for the first time by someone powerful. "What is the catch, sir?" she asked, keeping her voice even. Mr. Charles looked straight at her. "The catch is this. You will take care of yourself. You will finish your education. You will use the special gift you have to help other children, children like Leo, who feel invisible. You will write a letter to Leo once a month, just a simple note, to tell him how you are doing and what you are learning. He needs to know that his act of courage changed someone's life for the better. And you must never, ever waitress again." Tears had finally filled Ms. Ava's eyes, but they were tears of relief, not sadness. The heavy weight of her debt, the long, exhausting hours, and the fear of the future, it all lifted away in 1 second. "Mr. Montgomery," she said, her voice shaking only slightly. "That is not a catch. That is a miracle." Mr. Charles looked down at the floor, thinking. His own heart was going through a complete revolution. He had always believed that problems were solved by applying more money and more control. But Ms. Ava had shown him that the deepest problems of the heart could only be solved with human connection and dignity. He realized that by freeing her, he was also setting apart himself free, the part that had been cold and distant since Elizabeth died. Later that afternoon, the phone rang on Mr. Benson's desk at the Golden Fork. He was still polishing his perfectly clean glasses, ready to fire Ms. Ava Johnson on the spot. "Benson," Mr. Charles's voice boomed over the line. "I want you to send over all the paperwork for my new employee." Mr. Benson smiled widely. "The replacement for Miss Johnson?" "Of course, sir. I knew you'd approve of her firing." "No," Mr. Charles corrected him sharply. "I am not replacing Miss Johnson. I am firing you, effective immediately. Your lack of human decency and respect for employees and customers alike has cost you your job. You will be escorted out today. The man who takes your place will be trained to understand that every single person in that restaurant, from the dishwasher to the CEO, is worthy of respect." The line went dead. Mr. Benson stood there, stunned, holding a useless pair of glasses, his own power dissolving into nothingness. Weeks later, Ms. Ava sat at a small desk in her new, quiet apartment, opening a textbook on childhood development. The check had cleared, the debt was gone, and the heavy pressure was off her shoulders. She wrote her first letter to Leo, not as his former waitress, but as his friend. "Dear Leo," she wrote, "I started classes today. I learned that every single person has a voice, but sometimes we are too scared to use it. You used your voice that day in the restaurant, and you spoke a truth that was so powerful it shook a giant tower and changed my entire world. Thank you for teaching me that the only steps that truly matter are the ones you choose to lead yourself." Mr. Charles saw the letter first. He read it in his huge, silent office. He felt the warm memory of Elizabeth and realized that the tiny dance, the 3 clumsy, metal-screeching steps, had not just changed Miss Ava's life. It started a silent revolution in his own heart. He was learning how to be a father again, not a provider, but a real connection. He had spent his life valuing money, but he was finally learning the priceless value of dignity and courage. The simple act of kindness from a waitress had brought a heartbroken father and his son back to life and had given a smart, deserving woman the freedom she needed to finally fly.